Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
On the show today, we bring you an exclusive drive of the Mercedes-Benz E-Class all-terrain vehicle. Honda Amaze, Hyundai Accent and the Maruti Suzuki Dzire battle it out for the top spot. And we get you a quick look at the newly launched Mercedes AMG S63 Coupe and the Ducati Multistrada 1260 and 1260S. Hi, welcome to Overdrive. You're watching the show with me, Sohini Dutt. Now, the E-Class is a very important model in Mercedes-Benz's stable, so it comes as no surprise that time and again the brand would want to expand this lineup in various body styles. Now, joining the E-Class, which already comes in the form of the long wheelbase as well as the AMG variant, we are getting the E-Class in an all-new, all-terrain variant. Of course, we saw it at the Auto Expo and now we got a chance to drive it. Take a look.
As per the nomenclature at Mercedes-Benz, the vehicles that are capable of going off the road usually begin with the letters GL. It's a nod to the Geländewagen or the G-Wagon, its ultimate off-road vehicle in production so far. And then these letters are suffixed with letters like A, C, E or S from Merck's sedan lineup to indicate the level of luxury and equipment that they offer. So for example, the GLE is a vehicle that's capable of going off the road with the equipment or the luxury levels of an E-Class. And that is where things get a little confusing. If that's that, then what's this? This is the E-Class all-terrain. Unlike the E-Class long wheelbase sedan sold to us, the E-Class all-terrain is based on the E-Class Estate that was never introduced in the Indian market. Contrary to the preferences of my compatriots though, I like and endorse Estate body styles for the practicality and versatility that they offer. And the E-Class all-terrain scores plenty of points in that department and then some. So to clear the confusion, the GLE is an SUV with equipment or luxury levels that are comparable to the E-Class, while this is an E-Class with mild off-roading capabilities, and to that effect it gets a higher ride height, adaptive air suspension, higher profile for its tires and rugged cladding all around for protection against stone chips, pebbles or any such debris that the vehicle might kick up. While the E-Class face is familiar, the all-terrain gets a chunkier perforated grille that comes from the GL lineup. At the rear, a wide chrome bar on the tailgate and the elongated wraparound taillights give the all-terrain a wide-bodied appearance to visually counterbalance the higher ride height. Now, the all-terrain is targeted towards those who would like to be driven around for most of the week, maybe like to drive over the weekends. It's also meant for those who would like to go grand touring, and then it's an E-Class, so rear seat comfort is very important. Which means it has to be spacious, it has to be well cushioned, it has to be well contoured as well. And the E-Class all-terrain does all of it quite right. The leg space, the headroom, everything is quite ample. The driver's seat is set to my driving preference and still there is plenty of room in here. Back seat, strictly good for two adults, maybe a kid. You have a high tunnel console here. I do get AC vents on the floor and on the B-pillar. You also get these cup holders, a little bit of storage area in the center armrest. But overall, a very comfortable place to be in. Unlike the E-Class sedan though, you cannot really change the angle of the recline, angle of the backrest. All that is not happening, but in its default setting, in its default position, I think it is quite comfortable. The materials are typical premium E-Class and the equipment is familiar too. Analog instrumentation extending into a 12.3-inch digital infotainment screen, touch-sensitive switches on the steering wheel and ambient lighting with a 64-color palette to choose from. The distinctive elements are the sports seats up front, drilled metal pedals and the all-terrain badging here and there. Apart from the mild off-roading capabilities and the rugged styling, the other keyword for the E-Class all-terrain is practicality. Right from a foldable basket for your knickknacks, all the way up to this huge 640-litre boot with a wide opening, with a low loading lip. So loading all your cargo is not going to be a problem at all. Now, I told you that the recline of the backrest can't be increased for better comfort. However, it can be decreased by 10 degrees for increasing the cargo space by up to 30 litres. And if that is not enough, if you need more space, more versatility, the seats are in a 40-20-40 split and can be dropped electronically. to increase the space to a total of up to 1820 liters. You also have quite a big compartment to keep your toolkit, to keep the basket away, but it's not going to hold a spare wheel, which means there will be a space saver that will go in here. Generally, it is a matter of worry in most cars, but here with 1820 liters of boot space, I don't think you should be worried at all. The E-Class All-Terrain will be available in only one variant, the 220D, which means that it is powered by the 1950cc 4-cylinder diesel engine. It puts out about 194 PS of power and 400 Newton meters of torque. Mercedes-Benz claims that standstill to 100 comes up in about 8 seconds. So you see the performance figures, the power and torque outputs, they are on par with the other 2-liter engined SUVs in this space. The engine is mated to the slick 9G-tronic 9-speed automatic transmission. While the gearbox is a little bit slow to respond when you go pedal to the metal, it reacts quite quickly to part throttle inputs. This nature needs getting used to when you're driving around the bends or on off-road trails. The easiest way out is to use the paddle shifters. The gearbox puts all the power down to the road via the 4MATIC all-wheel drive system, and Mercedes-Benz claims that the tuning of the 4MATIC is derived from all the learnings from the GLE. It splits torque between the front and rear wheels quite discreetly and without imparting much understeer when pushing the car hard on tarmac or off it. Compared to the squishier setup in the E-Class sedan, the E-Class All-Terrain has a slightly firmer ride. Even in its comfort mode, the air suspension tends to offer a slightly firmer ride. Now, if you tackle the potholes, the undulations in the road at slow speeds like I'm doing right now, it's all fine. But if you hit the ruts, the joints, the sharper bumps at slightly higher speeds, things start getting a little noisy. It starts thudding and crashing through all of it. Not that it gives you a bone-jarring ride. None of that really gets translated into shocks inside the cabin, but it's just a little noisy. When the going gets tougher, an all-terrain mode exclusive to this car raises the suspension by a further 20mm at speeds of up to 35 km an hour to prevent scraping the underbody. Despite that jacked up ride height, it will not give you a commanding view of the road. If you want that sort of a thing, you will have to go with an SUV, something like the GLE. This is more E-Class-like to drive. The firm character of the suspension translates to good fun around the twisties by giving the car a pretty flat ride. The short wheelbase also makes for nimble handling dynamics compared to its saloon counterpart. And turn-ins are surprisingly quick despite the tall tires. I quite like the steering setup on this thing. It isn't too heavy, it isn't too light, it doesn't feel over-assisted, it feels quite precise. It's quite communicative. The feedback is quite good. Of course, it is not something that you would get in a BMW. It's not as communicative as what you would get in a BMW. But for a Mercedes-Benz, it is surprisingly good. Once you get used to the behavior of the drivetrain and the various driving modes, you realize that the E-Class All-Terrain is quite a delightful car to drive, and its ability to go off the beaten path makes it a rather sweet deal. That said, the E-Class segment is largely populated by businessmen who are driven around. Those who need better off-road capabilities go with the flow and settle for an SUV instead. Despite this clear demarcation, Mercedes-Benz hasn't shied away in the past from introducing various E-Class based body styles like the Coupe and the convertible to the Indian market, all in an effort to provide the consumer with a bouquet of options. The E-Class All-Terrain too falls in line with that school of thought, and in that, it targets a niche audience. It quite nicely plugs the gap between the saloon and the SUV, but it does so with a unique character that does not feel like a compromise between the two body styles.
Now, the compact sedan space seems to have a lot of competition in the market. Honda has recently launched its second generation Amaze. We were impressed by that car when we first drove it, but we decided to pit it against its closest rivals, the Maruti Suzuki Dzire as well as the Hyundai Accent. Now, Abhay will tell you just exactly which car came out on top.
Passenger cars probably don't get more mass market than compact sedans like these, but I really like how their designs have evolved. I have to give a big thumbs up to Maruti Suzuki for turning the Dzire into such a good looking car. The styling is a lot more cohesive now, and the stance is lower and sportier, which makes it look longer, while the curvy lines make it look very appealing from almost any angle. On the other hand, the new Amaze looks radically different, and the boot does not look like an afterthought anymore either. I also liked its front end, as the face reminds me of some of the 1990s American muscle cars, though the design has received mixed reactions overall. The accent is not as appealing as the other two cars here though, and if this were a beauty contest, the Hyundai wouldn't really make it to the final round. The Maruti Dzire then is the best looking car here. The interiors of the Honda Amaze are the most spacious in this comparison test, and that's also partly thanks to Honda's man maximum, machine minimum philosophy. I like how the windscreen sits further from the driver, while the part beige interiors, especially the seats and the roof, they accentuate the sense of airiness inside the cabin. The dashboard design in the new generation Amaze is very appealing and driver-centric, as controls are placed well within reach. Quality of plastics could have been slightly better though, as the plastics in the Amaze don't feel as premium as the Dzires or the Accents. The top-of-the-line VX version you see here gets a 7-inch touchscreen though, which does its bit in offering a premium feel. And while its cockpit might be more spacious than the Dzires, the Honda Amaze loses out to the Maruti by a small margin in terms of rear legroom and knee room. But the Amaze does not get rear air conditioning vents, which is a definite miss in this company. In terms of interior space, I think the Dzire is almost as spacious as the Amaze, if not as spacious. And that's also thanks to the fact that the interiors are again part black and part beige, which adds to the sense of airiness inside the cabin. And that's besides the fact that I think the Dzire seats are better. Well, they are comfortable and more accommodating than the Amaze seats, which are a little too soft, and the fit is also very snug. The Dzire's dashboard looks appealing, while the instrument cluster and flat bottom steering wheel look sporty. Touchscreen resolution and sensitivity in the Dzire is also the best of the lot, though the screen and its gloss black surrounds are a fingerprint magnet. The Dzire's combination armrest and the rear air conditioning vents together make for the best backseat experience of the lot. When you compare the interiors of the three cars here, you realize quickly that the Accent is the oldest car. It does not feel as spacious as the other two cars, and neither is the design of its dashboard or the interiors overall as appealing as the Amaze or the Dzire's interiors. The black and grey colour of the Accent's cabin robs it of the airy feel the other two cars offer. What's more, the Accent received a facelift just a little over a year ago, but the design already feels dated, as the other two cars look a lot more modern, both being new generation models unlike the Accent. Its cabin layout thus feels drab in comparison. The Accent also feels relatively cramped in comparison at the rear and loses out to the Dzire and the Amaze in terms of rear legroom and knee room.
Now, just to bring you up to speed with the comparison test, just before the break we told you that the Maruti Suzuki Dzire scored high in terms of the feature list as well as design. The Honda Amaze scored in terms of being the most spacious car in the test, and the Hyundai Accent seemed to lag a bit because it seems to be a little dated. But it's time now to get behind the wheels and see how the cars fare in terms of performance.
The Honda Amaze has the biggest and most powerful engine in this comparison test, which is a 1.5-litre 4-cylinder diesel that offers 100 PS of power. This is definitely an advantage for the Amaze, as it is the quickest accelerating car in this comparison test. And in typical Honda fashion, the engine feels smooth and refined, but it still sounds a bit clattery. Its performance may be brisk, but responses from Honda's 1.5-litre engine are slightly laid back as compared to the Dzire and the Accent's motors. The engine in the Amaze is very tractable though, and driving at low speeds in higher gears is never a problem. Honda's 5-speed gearbox also echoes the same sentiment, as shifts are positive and reassuring, but slightly rubbery in feel. Clearly, Honda has tweaked the powertrain to offer good fuel efficiency rather than please enthusiasts, and its fuel efficiency numbers confirm the same, as the new Honda Amaze was the most fuel efficient of the three cars in our test. The Dzire's powered by a slightly smaller 1.3-litre 4-cylinder diesel engine that makes about 75 PS. Now, you might want to think that's a 25% deficit as compared to the Amaze, but the Dzire is also about 50 kilos lighter, which helps it make up somewhat for that power deficit. And that's besides the fact that the Desire's engine is more responsive as compared to the Amaze engine and acceleration is quick. That said, the Desire's engine makes you wait longer for the turbo to spool up but get past 2000 RPM and the engine is the sprightliest of the lot. The Desire also has the best gearbox of the three, which feels sporty to use thanks to the short throws and the way the gears slot in. All three engines are high on refinement, but the Desire's engine is the quietest of the three. The gearbox and engine together help in making the Desire more engaging to drive than the other two, which is yet another advantage for the Maruti. The Hyundai Accent has the smallest engine in this comparison test, which is a 3-cylinder 1.2-litre diesel motor. But it is as powerful as the Desire and offers 75 PS, and it feels as sprightly as well, and acceleration is quick while the engine feels smooth and refined at all times. What's particularly impressive here is the fact that the Accent's engine feels as smooth and as refined as the Amaze and Desires, despite being a 3-pot motor, and does not have the typical thrum associated with 3-cylinder engines. On the whole, the Accent feels slightly boring on the powertrain front, though many buyers do seem to appreciate its nature. The suspension setup in the Honda Amaze is softer than the other two cars, which makes for an excellent ride quality. Its bump absorption abilities are excellent and ride quality is thus the best of the three, but that ride quality comes at the expense of handling. The new Amaze feels slightly floaty at speeds as compared to the other two, and there is a bit of body roll around corners as well. That said, its plush suspension will certainly help the Amaze win brownie points with buyers looking for a family car. The Amaze is also the quietest of the three going over bumps and potholes, as the suspension makes no noises even when going fast on bad roads. The suspension setup on the Desire is slightly firmer as compared to the Amaze, but that does not affect its abilities to soak up bumps and potholes. It feels engaging to drive on the highway, it feels very good around corners, planted, and this is, I think, the best driver's car in this comparison test, and the suspension definitely has a big role to play in that. The Desire's brakes could have been slightly sharper though, as the brakes in the Amaze and Accent offer better bite and more feedback in comparison. In terms of ride and handling, I think the Accent slots in right between the Desire and the Amaze both. Now, it isn't as sporty as the Desire, and the ride quality isn't as plush as the Amaze, where it soaks up bumps and undulations well, and while the handling is not exactly engaging, there is a confident feel at all times, be it on the highway when you're going fast or when you're going around corners. The Accent suspension setup feels as good as the Desire's in terms of soaking up bumps and potholes, but the Hyundai simply does not evoke the sporty feel from behind the wheel as the Maruti. Do not be mistaken, the Accent's dynamics will not let you complain thanks to its confident feel at all times, and it has no trouble in bettering the Amaze in terms of handling, and that's courtesy its well-balanced suspension setup. It delivers the goods thus, but the Accent will not delight enthusiasts the way the Desire does. Another reason behind this is its steering, which feels rather vague in comparison and does not match the Maruti in terms of feedback. It's interesting to note how the compact sedan segment has evolved over the years. All three cars here are well engineered and are spec'd rather lavishly too. Well, if that's not confusing enough, pricing for all three cars is similar as well. That said, the Desire is slightly more expensive as compared to the Accent and the Amaze, but it is the best package here as well. And it's the packaging is what makes the Desire the winner of this comparison test.
Well, like we always say, stay in touch with the team through Facebook, Twitter as well as YouTube. We'd like to hear what you thought about this story as well as our previous stories and the ones which we keep uploading on YouTube. Now, it was very exciting for motorsports fans last weekend because double Formula One world champion Fernando Alonso won his maiden attempt at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So congratulations to Toyota team as well as his teammate Sebastian Buemi as well as Kazuki Nakajima. Now that of course was news from France. What is happening closer to home? Take a look.
So Mercedes-AMG has launched the S63 AMG today for 2.55 crores ex-showroom India. Plenty of cosmetic changes as far as the car is concerned. The front grille, the Mercedes call it the Pan Americana grille, so it's a 12-slat brand new grille. The front headlamps are full LED units. The skirting is completely changed. If you look at the profile of the car, you get 20-inch rims as standard now on the vehicle. The tail end gets 62 OLED based units, so it packs in the same V8 bi-turbo unit that we saw in the E63 S as well a couple of months ago. So Mercedes AMG saying that this V8 bi-turbo will allow the S63 to do the 0 to 100 mark in 3.5 seconds, a top speed which usually they limit to 250 kilometers per hour, and you need to get the driver's package to open it to 300 kilometers per hour, is now standard with the S63. In terms of interiors, you get the same 12.3-inch infotainment and instrument cluster touchscreen that we've seen in other variants as well, including the S-Class. Similar cabin, obviously not as much leg space at the back, this being a coupe. The car gets a 9-speed MCT transmission with paddle shifters as well, so plenty going for the car. 2.55 crores ex-showroom.
Ducati India has just launched a Multistrada 1260 in the country at 15.99 lakh rupees ex-showroom, while the 1260S has been priced at 18.6 lakh rupees ex-showroom. The engine on the Multistrada 1260 has a larger engine displacement of 1262cc due to a slightly longer 71.5mm stroke than the current Ducati Multistrada 1200. The engine is now capable of 160 PS at 9,500 RPM and 129.4 Nm at 7,500 RPM. The Multistrada 1260 family is equipped with the Brembo brakes and Conring ABS as standard. The 1260 also gets edge features like Ducati traction control, Ducati wheelie control, the highly revered skyhook suspension, vehicle hold control, Conring LED lights, and a redesigned user interface. Well, we've had a very good week and we hope to continue that over the weekend as well. Do join us next week as we will bring you another power-packed episode of Overdrive. Until then, drive as well as ride safe.